The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as hundreds of students flooded into Westfield High School's massive cafeteria, their voices creating a symphony of teenage chatter that bounced off the cream-colored walls. It was the kind of moment that would normally disappear into the forgotten corners of high school memory, just another lunch period in another September. But sometimes, the most ordinary moments become extraordinary in ways no one could predict. What happened next would be captured in a 15-second video that would rack up over 3 million views in less than 24 hours, spark conversations across social media platforms, and remind everyone that strength can come from the most unexpected places. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The cafeteria at Westfield High School pulsed with the familiar rhythm of teenage social warfare. 400 students navigated the unspoken but ironclad rules of high school hierarchy, each knowing exactly where they belonged in the carefully constructed ecosystem of popularity, athletics, academics, and social status. The popular kids claimed the tables near the windows, where natural light made their Instagram stories look better. The athletes dominated the center section, their Letterman jackets and team gear serving as both uniform and armor. The drama club kids gathered near the stage area, their animated conversations punctuated by theatrical gestures. Meanwhile, the quieter students, the ones who preferred books to parties and study groups to social media fame, occupied the tables, along the far wall, content to exist in the comfortable shadows of anonymity. The architecture itself seemed designed to reinforce these divisions. The cafeteria stretched across nearly half the length of the school building, its high ceiling supported by thick concrete pillars that created natural boundaries between different social territories. Industrial-grade tables with attached benches were arranged in neat rows, their surfaces scarred by years of carved initials, homework assignments, and the occasional food fight. The serving line ran along the eastern wall, where cafeteria workers, in hairnets and aprons, dispensed everything from pizza slices to salad bars with practiced efficiency. The smell of French fries mixed with industrial-strength cleaning solution created the unmistakable aroma that every high school student would remember for the rest of their lives. Above it all, the administrative presence loomed like a watchful parent. Mr. Rodriguez, the lunch supervisor, stationed himself at a strategic corner table where he could observe the entire cafeteria while grading papers. His presence was both reassuring and intimidating, a reminder that adult authority existed even in this student-dominated space. The other teachers who drew lunch duty rotated through the room, their eyes scanning for potential trouble with the practiced vigilance of seasoned educators who had learned to read the subtle signs of brewing teenage drama. The social dynamics of Westfield High operated with the precision of a Swiss watch, each group understanding their role and staying within their designated boundaries. The popular crowd, led by students whose parents drove luxury cars and whose Instagram followers numbered in the thousands, commanded respect through a combination of charisma, wealth, and the indefinable quality that high school students call coolness. They spoke louder, laughed more freely, and moved through the cafeteria with the confidence of people who had never questioned their place in the world. At the apex of this social pyramid stood Jessica Thompson, a 17-year-old whose influence extended far beyond the cafeteria walls. She was the kind of student who appeared in every yearbook photo, whose name was mentioned in every school newsletter, and whose approval could make or break a person's entire high school experience. Jessica had perfected the art of being simultaneously admired and feared, beloved and envied. Her perfectly straightened blonde hair caught the light just right. Her designer clothes fit like they were custom-made, and her smile could warm a room or freeze it solid depending on her mood. Jessica's inner circle consisted of Tyler Brooks and Madison Wells, two students who had learned to navigate their own social success by staying in Jessica's orbit. Tyler, with his varsity jacket and easy grin, represented the classic popular athlete who could charm teachers and intimidate classmates with equal ease. Madison, whose family's wealth was evident in every carefully chosen accessory, served as Jessica's lieutenant in the complex social battles that determined high school royalty. Together, they formed a triumvirate of teenage power that commanded attention wherever they went. The unwritten rules of cafeteria engagement were as complex as any legal code. New students were expected to observe for several days before attempting to find their place in the social structure. Sitting at the wrong table could result in social exile. Making eye contact with someone above your social station required careful calculation.
Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story.
Even the act of walking through the cafeteria demanded strategic thinking about which routes would attract the least attention from potential predators. The teaching staff at Westfield High had developed their own understanding of these dynamics. They knew which students could be trusted with responsibility, which ones required constant supervision, and which ones possessed the dangerous combination of charisma and cruelty that could make life miserable for their classmates. Mr. Rodriguez, in particular, had spent 5 years learning to read the subtle signs of trouble. He could spot potential conflicts before they erupted, identify students who were struggling with more than just academics, and intervene in situations that might otherwise spiral out of control. The cafeteria's physical layout reflected decades of trial and error in managing teenage behavior. The tables were bolted to the floor to prevent impromptu furniture rearrangement. The windows were made of reinforced glass that could withstand both accidental impacts and intentional vandalism. The acoustics were designed to allow normal conversation while preventing any single voice from dominating the entire space. Even the color scheme, a combination of calming blues and energizing yellows, had been chosen by educational psychologists who understood the impact of environment on behavior. Technology played an increasingly important role in the social dynamics of Westfield High. Nearly every student carried a smartphone capable of recording high-definition video and instantly sharing it with the world. Social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, and Snapchat had become the primary venues for teenage social interaction, extending the reach of cafeteria drama far beyond the school's walls. A single video could make someone famous or destroy their reputation in a matter of hours. The potential for viral content lurked in every interaction, turning ordinary moments into potential internet sensations. The administration had struggled to keep up with the rapid evolution of social media culture. Policies about phone usage during school hours were constantly updated as new platforms emerged and new forms of digital behavior developed. Teachers found themselves having to learn about the latest apps and trends just to understand their students' references. The line between real-world and online harassment had blurred to the point where incidents that began in the cafeteria could continue for days or weeks in digital spaces that adults could barely comprehend. In this carefully orchestrated environment, where every student knew their place and every interaction carried potential consequences, the arrival of someone new represented both opportunity and danger. New students could either find their niche and blend seamlessly into the existing structure, or they could disrupt the delicate balance that kept the social ecosystem functioning. The first few days were crucial, as both students and teachers evaluated the newcomers' potential impact on the established order. The morning announcements had mentioned several new students joining Westfield High for the fall semester, but cafeteria rumors had focused on one in particular. Maya Chen had transferred from Portland, Oregon, following her family's cross-country move for her father's job. The details were sketchy, filtered through the usual channels of teenage gossip and speculation, but the basic facts were clear. She was a junior, she was quiet, and she would be eating lunch alone on her first day. Jessica Thompson surveyed her domain with the practiced eye of someone who had never questioned her right to rule. Her perfectly manicured nails drummed against the surface of the coveted corner table, the one positioned strategically near the floor-to-ceiling windows that offered both the best natural lighting and an unobstructed view of the entire cafeteria. This wasn't just a seat. It was a throne, and everyone at Westfield High understood the significance of who occupied it. The morning had started like any other for Jessica, with a carefully orchestrated routine that began at 5:30 a.m. Her alarm played a gentle melody that gradually increased in volume, ensuring she never woke up startled or disoriented. The first hour was dedicated to her skincare regimen, a complex series of cleansers, toners, serums, and moisturizers that maintained the flawless complexion that had graced the covers of 3 local magazines. Her makeup application was an art form, each stroke of mascara and sweep of foundation applied with the precision of a Renaissance master working on their greatest masterpiece. Her wardrobe selection process involved consulting 3 different weather apps, scrolling through her social media feeds to see what other influencers were wearing, and coordinating with Madison to ensure they complemented each other without competing. Today's outfit consisted of a cream-colored cashmere sweater that had cost more than most students' monthly allowances, paired with designer jeans that fit like they were sewn directly onto her body. Her jewelry was subtle, but expensive, each piece carefully chosen to suggest wealth without appearing ostentatious. The drive to school in her BMW convertible, a gift for her 16th birthday, provided the perfect opportunity to curate her morning Instagram story. She had mastered the art of filming herself while driving, knowing exactly which angles captured her best features and which songs would resonate with her 15,000 followers. The parking lot at Westfield High served as an extension of the social hierarchy, with the most desirable spots near the main entrance reserved for students, whose cars cost more than their teachers' annual salaries. Jessica's first 3 periods had unfolded with the predictable rhythm of someone who had perfected the balance between academic achievement and social dominance. She maintained a solid A- average, high enough to keep her parents satisfied, and her college prospects bright, but not so high as to be labeled a try-hard by her peers. Her teachers appreciated her participation in class discussions, though they remained unaware that her insights often came from late-night cramming sessions, designed to maintain her image rather than genuine intellectual curiosity. The transition between classes provided opportunities to reinforce her social position through carefully orchestrated encounters. A compliment here, a subtle put-down there, a knowing look shared with her inner circle. Each interaction served to maintain the delicate balance of power that kept her at the top of the teenage food chain. She had learned from watching her older sister navigate the same hallways 3 years earlier that high school success required constant vigilance and strategic thinking. Tyler Brooks had claimed his position at Jessica's table through a combination of athletic prowess and natural charisma that made him irresistible to both students and teachers. His Letterman jacket, earned through 3 years of varsity football, served as a badge of honor that opened doors and commanded respect throughout the school. The previous Friday's game against their crosstown rivals had ended with Tyler scoring the winning touchdown, a moment that had been captured by the local newspaper and shared thousands of times on social media. His morning routine was considerably less complex than Jessica's, but no less important to maintaining his social status. The pre-dawn workout in his family's garage gym kept his 6'2" frame in peak condition, while his protein shake breakfast ensured he had the energy to dominate both on the field and in the classroom. His academic performance hovered around the B+ range, high enough to maintain his eligibility for sports, but not so high as to threaten his image as the quintessential student-athlete. Tyler's relationship with Jessica was complicated, built on mutual respect for each other's social power rather than romantic attraction. They had dated briefly during their sophomore year, a relationship that had been documented extensively on social media and discussed endlessly in the school's gossip networks. The breakup had been amicable, conducted with the same strategic thinking that governed all their interactions. They had recognized that they were more valuable to each other as allies than as romantic partners, and their friendship had become one of the most stable elements of Westfield High's social landscape. Madison Wells completed the triumvirate through her unique combination of wealth, intelligence, and ruthless social calculation. Her family's fortune, built on a chain of successful restaurants across the tri-state area, provided her with resources that exceeded even Jessica's considerable advantages. Madison's style was more understated than Jessica's, favoring classic pieces that whispered rather than shouted their expense. Her jewelry collection included pieces inherited from her grandmother, each carrying both monetary and sentimental value that added depth to her carefully constructed image. Madison's academic performance consistently placed her in the top 10% of their class, an achievement that she managed while maintaining her social obligations and managing her family's charitable foundation's youth programs. She had learned to navigate the delicate balance between appearing effortlessly intelligent and working hard enough to achieve genuine success. Her teachers considered her one of their most promising students, unaware that her academic excellence was as carefully planned as every other aspect of her life. The relationship between the three friends operated on multiple levels of loyalty, competition, and mutual benefit. They had learned to support each other's individual goals while maintaining the collective power that came from their alliance. Jessica provided the charisma and leadership. Tyler brought the athletic credibility and male perspective, and Madison contributed the intellectual gravitas and financial resources that sustained their position at the top of the social hierarchy. Their table in the cafeteria served as more than just a place to eat lunch. It was the unofficial headquarters of student government, the nerve center of social planning, and the court where disputes were settled and judgments were rendered. Other students approached with a combination of reverence and fear, knowing that a positive interaction could elevate their social status, while a negative encounter could result in social exile. The conversations that took place at their table rippled outward through the school's social networks, influencing everything from weekend party invitations to homecoming court selections. The power dynamics that governed their interactions with other students were complex and ever-evolving. Jessica, Tyler, and Madison had learned to read the subtle signs of social positioning, understanding instinctively who was rising in status and who was falling. They could identify potential threats to their position and neutralize them through strategic manipulation of the social environment. They had also learned to recognize genuine talent and character, occasionally extending their protection to students who possessed qualities they respected or found useful. Their influence extended far beyond the confines of Westfield High School. Their social media presence commanded attention from students at neighboring schools, and their weekend parties were legendary throughout the district. College recruiters knew their names, not just for their individual achievements, but for their collective influence on student culture. Local businesses courted their endorsements, understanding that a positive review from Jessica's Instagram account could significantly impact their bottom line. The responsibilities that came with their social position were both burdensome and intoxicating. They were expected to set trends, resolve conflicts, and maintain the delicate balance that kept the school's social ecosystem functioning. Other students looked to them for guidance on everything from fashion choices to relationship advice, while teachers relied on their influence to maintain order and promote positive behavior. The weight of these expectations sometimes felt overwhelming, but the power and privilege that came with their position made the burden worthwhile. Their friendship had been tested by various challenges over the years, from romantic complications to academic competition to family drama that spilled over into their school lives. They had learned to navigate these difficulties through honest communication and mutual support, understanding that their individual success was tied to their collective strength. The bond between them had deepened through shared experiences that ranged from triumphant victories to devastating failures, creating a foundation of trust that had proven unshakable. The arrival of new students always created ripples in the carefully maintained social order, and Jessica, Tyler, and Madison had developed sophisticated strategies for managing these disruptions. Sometimes new students could be seamlessly integrated into existing social groups, their presence adding fresh energy without threatening established hierarchies. Other times, newcomers possessed qualities or backgrounds that challenged the existing order, requiring more active management to maintain stability. The morning announcements had mentioned several new students, but cafeteria intelligence had identified one who seemed particularly significant. Maya Chen represented the kind of unknown variable that could either enhance their social environment or disrupt it entirely. The limited information available suggested she was academically gifted, socially inexperienced, and potentially vulnerable to the kind of social manipulation that could either elevate or destroy a high school career. As the lunch period approached, Jessica felt the familiar thrill of anticipation that came with new social challenges. Her position at the top of the hierarchy required constant vigilance and strategic thinking, but it also provided opportunities to demonstrate her power and influence. The cafeteria would soon fill with hundreds of students, each carrying their own hopes, fears, and social ambitions, creating the perfect stage for whatever drama might unfold. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as students began filtering into the cafeteria, their conversations creating a growing buzz of excitement and anticipation. Jessica checked her reflection in her phone's camera, ensuring her appearance remained flawless, while Tyler and Madison settled into their positions at the table. The stage was set for another day of teenage social theater, with Jessica Thompson directing the performance from her throne at the center of it all. Maya Chen stood at the entrance of the cafeteria, her backpack slung over one shoulder and a brown paper lunch bag clutched in her free hand. The overwhelming cacophony of voices, laughter, and clattering trays hit her like a physical force, making her pause for a moment to gather her courage. She had navigated many first days in her 17 years, but none had felt quite as daunting as this moment at Westfield High School. Her family had moved 6 times in the past decade, following her father's career in renewable energy consulting from city to city across the country. Each relocation had brought new challenges, new schools, and new social hierarchies to navigate. Maya had become an expert at reading the unspoken rules of teenage environments, understanding instinctively which groups were welcoming and which were dangerous. She had learned to make herself small, to observe before acting, and to find safety in the margins of high school society. The morning had begun with the familiar ritual of getting ready for another first day. Maya's alarm had gone off at 6:15, giving her enough time to prepare without rushing. Her routine was simple and practical, focused on comfort rather than impression. She had chosen her outfit carefully, selecting dark jeans and a navy blue hoodie that would help her blend into the background while she assessed her new environment. Her long black hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and her makeup consisted of nothing more than lip balm and a light application of mascara. The drive to school with her mother had been filled with the same encouraging words Maya had heard before every first day at every new school. Her mother reminded her of her strengths, her resilience, and her ability to adapt to new situations. Maya appreciated the support, but she also felt the weight of her mother's own anxiety about the constant upheaval in their family life. Moving frequently had been necessary for her father's career advancement, but it had taken a toll on everyone, especially Maya and her younger brother. Her first 3 classes had gone smoothly enough. The teachers had been welcoming, introducing her to the class with varying degrees of enthusiasm and providing her with the necessary materials to catch up with the curriculum. Her classmates had shown polite interest, offering friendly smiles and helpful directions to her next class. Maya had begun to hope that Westfield High might be different from some of her previous schools, where integration had proven more challenging. The academic environment at Westfield was noticeably more rigorous than her previous school in Portland. The AP Literature class she had attended second period was discussing Toni Morrison's Beloved with a sophistication that impressed her. The students were engaged and articulate, their discussions revealing genuine understanding of complex themes and literary techniques. Maya had remained quiet during the discussion, preferring to observe and learn the classroom dynamics before contributing her own insights. Her advanced placement chemistry class had presented a more immediate challenge. The teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had assigned lab partners based on seating arrangements, pairing Maya with a quiet student named David, who seemed more interested in his phone than in the periodic table. Maya had completed most of the assignment, herself, drawing on her extensive background in science to navigate the complex chemical equations and experimental procedures. Her previous school had offered an exceptional science program, and she had taken advantage of every opportunity to advance her knowledge and skills. The transition between classes had provided Maya with opportunities to observe the social geography of Westfield High. She had noted the obvious hierarchies, the territorial boundaries, and the unspoken rules that govern student interactions. The popular crowd was easy to identify, their confidence and expensive clothing marking them as clearly as any uniform. The athletes moved through the hallways with the swagger that came from physical prowess and social approval. The academic achievers clustered around their lockers, discussing homework assignments and upcoming exams with the intensity of young scholars. Maya had also observed the students who existed in the spaces between these defined groups. The artists and musicians who had found their identity in creative expression, the gamers and tech enthusiasts who bonded over shared digital interests, and the quiet ones who, like herself, preferred to observe rather than participate in the social theater of high school. These were the students she would naturally gravitate toward, finding safety and friendship among others who understood the value of intellectual curiosity and authentic connection. Her locker assignment had placed her in a section of the school that seemed to attract a diverse mix of students. The combination to her lock had taken several attempts to master, her nervous fingers fumbling with the unfamiliar sequence while other students rushed past her to their next classes. She had managed to organize her books and supplies efficiently, creating a small space that felt momentarily like home in the midst of the overwhelming new environment. The lunch period represented both an opportunity and a challenge. Maya understood that cafeteria seating was a crucial element of high school social positioning, and she had no intention of making any missteps that might complicate her integration into the school community. Her plan was simple: find an empty table in a neutral location, eat her lunch quietly while observing the social dynamics around her, and begin the process of identifying potential friends and allies. Her brown paper lunch bag contained the same meal her mother had packed for her first day at every new school: a turkey and cheese sandwich on whole wheat bread, an apple, a small bag of pretzels, and a thermos of homemade soup. It was comfort. Food that reminded her of home and family, providing emotional sustenance as well as physical nourishment. Maya had learned to appreciate these small consistencies in a life marked by constant change and adaptation. As she stood at the cafeteria entrance, Maya conducted her usual reconnaissance. The popular table near the windows was easily identifiable, occupied by students whose clothing, posture, and animated conversation marked them as the social elite. The athletic tables in the center of the room buzzed with energy and competitive banter. The academic tables along the far wall were populated by students who brought their textbooks to lunch and discussed their classes with genuine enthusiasm. Maya's attention was drawn to a small table near the back corner of the cafeteria, partially hidden behind one of the structural columns that supported the high ceiling. It was empty except for a few crumbs from the previous lunch period, and its location offered both privacy and a clear view of the entire cafeteria. She began walking toward it, navigating carefully between the crowded tables and trying to avoid drawing attention to herself. Her progress was slow and deliberate, her eyes scanning the room for potential obstacles or opportunities. She noticed a group of students at one table who were engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion about a recent physics assignment. Another table was occupied by members of the drama club, their conversation punctuated by theatrical gestures and dramatic expressions. The diversity of interests and personalities represented in the cafeteria was encouraging, suggesting that Westfield High might offer numerous opportunities for meaningful connections. Maya's backpack contained more than just school supplies. It held the accumulated wisdom of someone who had learned to navigate new environments with skill and grace. She carried a small notebook where she recorded observations about each new school, tracking the social dynamics, academic expectations, and cultural norms that would help her succeed. Her previous entries detailed the strategies that had worked in different contexts, the mistakes that had taught her valuable lessons, and the friendships that had sustained her through difficult transitions. The notebook also contained letters from friends she had left behind in previous cities, physical reminders of the connections she had made and maintained despite the geographical distances. These relationships had taught her that authentic friendship could transcend the artificial boundaries of high school social hierarchies, and that genuine connection was possible even in the most challenging circumstances. Maya's approach to her corner table was interrupted by a slight stumble as her foot caught on the leg of an occupied chair. She managed to maintain her balance, but the brief moment of clumsiness sent a flush of embarrassment across her cheeks. The students at the nearby table glanced up briefly before returning to their conversation, but Maya felt the familiar anxiety that came with any deviation from her carefully planned invisibility. Her chosen table was exactly what she had hoped for: clean, quiet, and positioned to provide both privacy and observation opportunities. Maya set down her backpack and lunch bag, then took a moment to survey her new environment from this secure vantage point. The cafeteria was a microcosm of human behavior, each table representing a different aspect of the teenage experience. She could study the social interactions, identify potential allies, and begin the process of finding her place in this new community. The fluorescent lights overhead cast a harsh but even illumination across the cafeteria, creating an environment that was functional rather than welcoming. Maya had learned to adapt to many different types of school environments, from the warm, inviting cafeterias of smaller schools to the institutional sterility of larger urban institutions. Westfield High fell somewhere in the middle, modern and well-maintained, but lacking the personal touches that made a space feel truly comfortable. As Maya settled into her seat and began unpacking her lunch, she felt the familiar mixture of hope and apprehension that accompanied every new beginning. She had survived many first days, adapted to numerous social environments, and built meaningful relationships in unexpected places. Westfield High represented another opportunity to demonstrate her resilience, her intelligence, and her capacity for authentic connection with others who shared her values and interests. The conversations around her created a symphony of teenage voices, each table contributing its own melody to the overall composition. Maya listened carefully, not to eavesdrop, but to understand the rhythms and patterns of communication that would help her navigate this new social landscape. Her experience had taught her that successful integration required patience, observation, and the wisdom to recognize opportunities when they presented themselves. The whispers began as a low murmur, barely audible above the general din of cafeteria conversation, but Maya's finely tuned instincts for social danger picked up on the shift immediately. She had developed this sensitivity through years of being the new student, learning to detect the subtle changes in atmosphere that preceded either acceptance or rejection. The sound was like wind through leaves before a storm, a rustling of voices that carried an undercurrent of curiosity, mixed with something less welcoming. At the popular table near the windows, heads had begun to turn in Maya's direction, with the casual but deliberate movement of predators assessing potential prey. Jessica Thompson's perfectly styled blonde hair caught the light as she leaned forward slightly, her eyes narrowing with the calculating expression Maya had seen countless times in countless schools. It was the look of someone who had identified something that didn't belong, something that required investigation and potential correction. Tyler Brooks paused mid-bite of his gourmet sandwich, his athletic frame shifting to follow Jessica's gaze across the cafeteria. His expression was less predatory than curious, the look of someone who was used to being entertained by the social dynamics that played out around him. Madison Wells set down her salad fork with deliberate precision, her movements economical and purposeful as she joined her friends in their assessment of the newcomer who had dared to sit alone in their domain. The ripple effect spread outward from their table like stones thrown into still water. Students at nearby tables began to notice the shift in attention, their own conversations faltering as they tried to determine what had captured the interest. of the school's social royalty. Some turned to look directly at Maya, while others used reflective surfaces or peripheral vision to observe without appearing obvious. The cafeteria's social radar system was activating, and Maya found herself at the center of unwanted attention. Maya continued unpacking her lunch with studied calm, her movements deliberate and unhurried, despite the growing awareness that she had become the subject of scrutiny. Her turkey sandwich looked humble and homemade compared to the elaborate meals surrounding her, but she refused to show embarrassment about her family's practical approach to school lunches. She had learned long ago that projecting confidence, even when she didn't feel it, was essential to surviving the first crucial days at a new school. The conversations at neighboring tables had shifted subtly, maintaining their original topics, while incorporating oblique references to the new student who had appeared in their midst. Maya caught fragments of discussion about transfer students, speculation about where she might have come from, and assessments of her clothing, appearance, and social positioning. The commentary was not overtly hostile, but it carried the weight of judgment that could quickly transform into something more dangerous. Jessica's voice rose slightly above the general conversation level, not quite loud enough to be considered shouting, but clear enough to carry across multiple tables. She was discussing weekend plans with apparent casualness, but her timing and projections suggested a more calculated purpose. Maya recognized the technique from previous schools where popular students used seemingly innocent conversations to establish their territorial dominance and social authority. The mention of exclusive parties, expensive shopping trips, and family vacation homes served multiple purposes in the complex social ecosystem of high school. It reinforced Jessica's position at the top of the hierarchy, while simultaneously highlighting the differences between her privileged lifestyle and the more modest circumstances of students like Maya. The casual references to wealth and status were designed to remind everyone of the social boundaries that governed their interactions. Tyler's contribution to the conversation focused on his athletic achievements and upcoming college recruitment visits, his voice carrying the easy confidence of someone who had never doubted his place in the world. His stories of training camps, scholarship offers, and meetings with college coaches painted a picture of success and opportunity that seemed as distant as another planet to students whose families struggled with basic expenses. The subtext was clear. This was the level of achievement and recognition that mattered in their social universe. Madison's additions to the conversation were more subtle but equally effective, weaving references to her family's business connections, cultural sophistication, and academic achievements into seemingly casual observations about current events and school policies. Her intelligence was weaponized, used not just to demonstrate her capabilities, but to establish the intellectual standards that governed acceptance into their inner circle. Maya understood the performance for what it was, having witnessed similar displays of social dominance in multiple school environments. The popular students were not necessarily speaking to her directly, but they were certainly speaking about her, using their conversation to establish the context within which she would be evaluated and judged. It was a form of psychological warfare disguised as casual lunch conversation. Other students in the cafeteria were responding to the subtle tension in different ways. Some seemed oblivious to the undercurrents, continuing their own conversations, without awareness of the social drama unfolding around them. Others were clearly attuned to the dynamics, their body language and facial expressions revealing their understanding of what was happening. A few appeared sympathetic to Maya's situation, while others seemed eager to witness whatever confrontation might be developing. The lunch supervisors, including Mr. Rodriguez, were positioned strategically around the cafeteria, but appeared unaware of the subtle social maneuvering taking place beneath their watchful eyes. Maya had learned that adults often missed the nuanced forms of teenage aggression that stopped just short of obvious bullying. The popular students at Westfield High were clearly skilled at operating within the boundaries of acceptable behavior, while still exerting their influence and control. Maya's own response to the growing attention was carefully calculated based on years of experience navigating similar situations. She maintained her composure, continuing to eat her lunch with apparent indifference to the scrutiny she was receiving. Her posture remained relaxed but alert, ready to respond to whatever might come next while avoiding any actions that could be interpreted as provocative or defensive. The social mathematics of high school were complex and unforgiving, with unwritten rules that governed everything from seating arrangements to conversation topics to acceptable forms of self-expression. Maya had learned these rules through trial and error, sometimes making mistakes that had resulted in social isolation or active hostility. She had also learned that the first few interactions with the dominant social group often determined the trajectory of her entire high school experience. Her previous experiences had taught her that there were multiple ways to respond to social pressure and intimidation. Some students chose to fight back aggressively, challenging the established hierarchy through direct confrontation. Others attempted to join the popular group by demonstrating their worthiness through various forms of social currency. Still others retreated into invisibility, hoping to avoid conflict by remaining beneath notice. Maya had experimented with all of these approaches in different schools, learning that each environment required its own strategy. At her school in Denver, she had successfully integrated with the academic elite by demonstrating her intellectual capabilities. In Phoenix, she had found acceptance among the arts community by showcasing her photography skills. In Portland, she had connected with the environmental activism group, finding purpose and friendship among students who shared her concerns about climate change and social justice. Westfield High presented its own unique challenges and opportunities. The school's reputation for academic excellence suggested that intellectual achievement was valued, but the obvious wealth and privilege of many students created additional barriers for someone from a more modest background. Maya would need to navigate these competing values while finding her own path to acceptance and belonging. The tension in the cafeteria continued to build as more students became aware of the subtle drama unfolding around Maya's solitary lunch. The popular table's conversation had grown more animated, with Jessica's gestures becoming more theatrical, and Tyler's voice carrying further across the room. Madison's contributions had become more pointed, her observations about school policies and social dynamics taking on an edge that suggested deeper meaning. Maya finished her sandwich and began eating her apple, using the time to continue her assessment of the social landscape around her. She noted which students seemed sympathetic to her situation, which ones appeared to be waiting for entertainment at her expense, and which ones were simply trying to avoid getting caught in whatever conflict might be brewing. This information would be crucial for identifying potential allies and avoiding unnecessary enemies. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting their harsh illumination on a scene that was playing out according to patterns as old as human social organization. The dynamics of inclusion and exclusion, power and vulnerability, conformity and individuality were being negotiated through subtle signals and coded conversations that would determine Maya's place in this new community. Maya's phone vibrated softly in her pocket, a text message from her mother asking how her first day was going. She resisted the urge to check it immediately, knowing that any sign of seeking external support or comfort could be interpreted as weakness by students who were watching for vulnerabilities to exploit. She would respond later, when she was safely away from the cafeteria's theater of teenage social warfare. The countdown to direct confrontation was beginning, though Maya couldn't yet predict its exact form or timing. The popular students were clearly building toward some kind of interaction, their conversation and body language suggesting that her period of anonymous observation was coming to an end. Maya steeled herself for whatever was coming, drawing on her accumulated experience and inner strength to prepare for the challenge that would determine her fate at Westfield High School. Jessica Thompson rose from her seat with the fluid grace of someone accustomed to commanding attention, her designer heels clicking against the polished cafeteria floor as she made her way across the room. The conversations around her seemed to quiet slightly, as if the entire cafeteria had collectively held its breath in anticipation of whatever was about to unfold. Tyler and Madison followed behind her, their movements synchronized like a well-rehearsed dance, creating a procession that drew every eye in the room. Maya sensed their approach before she saw them, that familiar tightening in her chest that came with the recognition of impending confrontation. She didn't look up from her lunch immediately, instead taking another deliberate bite of her apple while mentally preparing herself for whatever test was about to come. Her years of experience had taught her that the first few moments of these encounters were crucial, setting the tone for everything that would follow. Well, well, Jessica's voice carried across the suddenly quiet section of the cafeteria, pitched perfectly to sound casual while ensuring maximum audibility. Looks like we have a new addition to our little community. She stopped directly beside Maya's table, close enough to create an unmistakable sense of invasion without quite crossing into overtly aggressive territory. I'm Jessica Thompson, student body president, head of the social committee, and basically the person who makes sure everyone feels welcome here at Westfield. Maya looked up slowly, meeting Jessica's gaze with steady brown eyes that betrayed none of the nervousness she felt churning in her stomach. Maya Chen, she replied simply, her voice calm and even. Nice to meet you. She made no move to stand or extend her hand, understanding instinctively that this was not a genuine welcome, but rather some form of social assessment disguised as friendly introduction. Tyler stepped forward slightly, his varsity jacket catching the overhead lights as he flashed his most charming smile. Maya, that's a pretty name. Where'd you transfer from? His tone was friendly enough, but Maya caught the underlying edge. That suggested this was an interrogation rather than casual conversation. Portland, she answered, taking another bite of her apple. My family moves around a lot for my dad's work. Madison tilted her head slightly, her perfectly styled hair shifting like silk as she studied Maya with calculating eyes. That must be so hard. Never really having a place to call home. Never building lasting friendships or putting down roots. Her words were delivered with apparent sympathy, but Maya recognized the subtle cruelty underneath, the implication that her transient lifestyle somehow made her less worthy of respect or consideration. Actually, it's taught me a lot about adaptability and resilience, Maya responded, her voice carrying a quiet strength that hadn't been there moments before. You learn to find home in yourself rather than in places or things. She met Madison's gaze directly, refusing to be diminished by the attempted psychological manipulation. Jessica's smile became slightly more pronounced, though it never quite reached her eyes. How inspiring. You know, we should probably warn you about some of the social dynamics here at Westfield. It can be really easy for new students to accidentally step on toes or misunderstand the way things work around here. She paused, letting the implied threat settle in the air between them. For instance, some tables are reserved for students who've really earned their place through years of contribution to the school community. Maya set down her apple with deliberate precision, finally standing to meet Jessica at eye level. The movement was slow and controlled, displaying none of the deference that Jessica had clearly expected. Thank you for the orientation, Maya said, her voice carrying a new quality that made several nearby students look up from their conversations. But I think I can figure out where I belong without a roadmap. Oh, really? Tyler interjected, his friendly facade beginning to crack slightly. And where exactly do you think that is? Because from where I'm standing, you look like someone who might be more comfortable eating lunch in the library with the other social rejects. The words hung in the air like a challenge, and Maya felt the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with the recognition that she had reached a crucial decision point. She could back down, apologize, and retreat to whatever safe corner they deemed appropriate for someone of her social status. Or she could stand her ground and face whatever consequences came with refusing to accept their judgment. Maya smiled. Then, an expression that transformed her entire face and seemed to light up her dark eyes with an inner fire that none of them had expected. You know what's interesting about moving around as much as I have? She said, her voice carrying clearly across the now silent section of cafeteria. You get to see the same types of people in every school, playing the same tired games, thinking they're special because they've never left their little bubble. Jessica's expression hardened, her mask of friendly authority slipping slightly. Excuse me? I've met a Jessica Thompson in Portland and Phoenix and Denver and Seattle, Maya continued, her confidence building with each word. Different names, same insecurity dressed up as authority. Same need to tear others down to feel important. Same predictable little power plays that everyone sees right through, but nobody calls out because they're too scared or too bored to bother. The silence that followed was deafening. Students at nearby tables had stopped even pretending to eat, their attention completely focused on the confrontation unfolding before them. Several had their phones out, recognizing that they were witnessing something significant enough to document and share. Madison stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. You have no idea who you're talking to or what kind of mistake you're making right now. Maya turned to face Madison directly, her smile never wavering. Actually, I know exactly who I'm talking to. I'm talking to 3 people who peaked in high school and are desperately trying to hold on to something that was never that impressive to begin with. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. The real question is whether you're going to keep proving my point or find something better to do with your time. Jessica's face had gone pale with rage, her carefully maintained composure cracking under the unexpected assault on her authority. You'll regret this, she said, her voice low and threatening. Nobody talks to me like that and just walks away. Watch me, Maya replied simply, gathering her lunch supplies and slinging her backpack over her shoulder. She walked away from the table with unhurried steps, her head held high and her posture radiating the kind of quiet confidence that couldn't be faked or borrowed. Behind her, the cafeteria erupted into excited conversation as students processed what they had just witnessed. Phones buzzed with text messages and social media updates, spreading the news of the confrontation across the school's digital networks faster than wildfire. By the end of the school day, the 15-second video of Maya's verbal takedown would be viewed thousands of times, turning her into an overnight sensation and proving that sometimes the most powerful comebacks come from the most unexpected sources. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.